My 26F husband, 26M, cut his family off because they didn't want us to get married. His grandfather, 80/90SM, is sick, and he's still refusing to speak to them. My husband and I met in college. His family were nice whilst we were dating but did a 180 when they found out my husband was planning to propose. They tried to convince him not to and threatened to disinherit him/financially cut him off. They never went through with the latter. If he did, he'd warned me that his family were elitist when we met, so I wasn't that shocked by their reaction. In the end, he proposed and cut them off completely. They tried apologizing before our wedding, but my husband refused to talk to them and wouldn't invite them. Fast forward to now, we've been married for over 2 years and his sister reached out to me over Facebook. She said she'd been trying to contact my husband for a week, but he wouldn't respond to her or any of their family and she didn't want to deliver the news in a message. She asked me to ask him to call her. I mentioned it to my husband, and he said he wasn't going to do it, and that this was another one of their games to try and get him to contact them. I relayed the message to my sil, and she ended up telling me that their grandfather was very sick, and he was desperate to see my husband again. Their family is worried he isn't going to make it. I tried to tell my husband this, but he's adamant that they're lying despite his sister having sent me pictures as proof. He refuses to look at them. His parents have both called me to apologize for how they behaved again and are begging me to convince my husband to see reason. My husband's grandfather is the person he was closest to, and I know if he passes away without them making up, my husband won't be able to live with himself. I know he's still hurt by how his family reacted, but I think he's letting that cloud his judgment. How do I make him see that they're not lying when he's in so much denial? Too long didn't read, my husband's family were unhappy about him proposing to me and tried to force him not to. He ended up cutting them off and he's continued to stay in North Carolina despite them apologizing and reaching out several times over the years. Now his grandfather is sick, and he thinks they're lying despite sending us proof and is adamant about continuing to ignore them. Do not go behind his back and contact them. Don't badger him into reconnecting with them. He went no contact for a good reason. He can make the choice to communicate with them or not. They only came to you because he won't answer them. I sincerely doubt they've changed their views or behavior. They want to weasel their way back into his life, and try to control him. What you heard about them not wanting him to marry you, probably not even the tip of the iceberg. There was probably plenty of behind the scenes shittiness you didn't get to hear about. In any case, please don't force your husband to contact them, and don't contact them. Let him decide how he wants to approach this. I mentioned it to my husband, and he said he wasn't going to do it, and that this was another one of their games to try and get him to contact them. This is not the kind of thing a person says after one transgression. I get the strong feeling that your husband has been putting up with bullshit from his family for a very, very long time. Their objections to your marriage were just the final straw. Your husband knows his relationship with his grandfather better than you do. As hard as it may be, I think you need to back off and let him handle his family how he sees fit. He's not unaware of his previous closeness to his grandfather. He's choosing to stay away anyway. If you think your husband is a fundamentally reasonable person, then trust him to know how to handle his family, even if it makes you uncomfortable. He may make different choices than you would under the same circumstances, but that doesn't make him wrong. His insistence in maintaining North Carolina makes me think that his issues go far beyond threats of disowning or disinheritance. Maybe they were abusive when he was younger and he hasn't been able to discuss it with you yet. Maybe they said unforgivable things about you and he never told you to spare your feelings. As much as I agree with you, I think the most important thing here is to support your husband regardless of what he decides. It is likely that them trying to stop marriage was the last straw in larger history of controlling behavior. You treat it as singular exceptional event, but he likely see it as part of larger pattern. I think it is not just about him feeling hurt. Cutting parents off is hard emotionally. Even if those parents are narcissistic or abusive, he might be refusing to trust them now for that reason. Contact might reopen emotional can of worms. If they are the kind of people who could plausibly lie about this, if he is not paranoid, contact is risky. How much do you two talk about his childhood? Maybe it would be worth asking him about. You can't force your husband to get back in touch with his family, and if you try it's likely to cause problems between the two of you as well. You can say, once, I know you're still hurt by the way they treated you and us, but I worry that you're going to regret it if you don't see your grandfather before he passes away, and I don't want to see you hurt even more by this. I totally support whatever you decide to do, but this is the evidence that he's sick, and I believe your sister when she says that he probably doesn't have much time left. Please think about it, and let me know if you need to talk. Then leave him alone. He knows his family better than you. It's possible that they really are using this crisis to try to bring him back in, where the control tactics and manipulation will start again. Trust your husband to know what he needs. How to tell my best friend to stop bugging me about having children. I'll try to keep this short. Too long didn't read. At the bottom, I, 20F, have never wanted or had much interest in children. I don't really like them and feel very uncomfortable around them as I struggle to interact with them. Furthermore, I'm irritable by nature. Of course I can control myself and would never yell at a child. I know they can't help it. My strongest feeling/reason for not having children is that I don't think you should have children unless you 100% want a child and do not think you would have doubts or regrets. Any resentment or doubt is always picked up by a child, and I would never wish that on a child I did not have to and may not have wanted to have. My best friend, 20F, had very similar feelings towards children growing up, in her case largely because her parents worked long hours leaving her to fend for herself and her younger brothers, and she can see how her resentment towards them affected them. They have even told her they knew that's how she felt. A few years ago my friend unfortunately had to have an abortion. It was the right decision for both her and the unborn child. She was unstable mentally and financially, and she maintains to this day that she made the right choice. However, she also intensely regrets the decision. She recognizes that the hormones she experienced in the early weeks of the pregnancy caused a shift in her feelings towards children, but she doesn't seem to realize anymore when she just becomes patronizing about it. Now, when the topic of children and my not wanting them comes up, she parrots the same response I've heard from adults my whole life: you will one day, you will when you're older, etc. It's so patronizing, and I've expressed this to her, but she brushes it off with "but you will." She knows my reasons for not wanting children and agrees they are justified, but she won't leave it alone. Last weekend we were debating, increasingly heatedly, the topic once more, and she begged me to freeze my eggs before I hit 35 if by then I've not realized and changed my mind. As her parents work in the field, she offered to try and get me a discount. I mean, never say never, but at the age of 16, 17, 18 I was asked to make choices about my education that would shape my life. Completing a degree several years later in a field I am planning to work in, I feel confident in my ability to have feelings and make choices about my future. That may sound naive, but I know my own mind and have known it for most of my life. And now I have my closest friend asking me to spend money on preserving a future I have never foreseen for myself. Not only because I do not want children, but also because if I ever had them I would want to adopt. As a gay-leaning bisexual, and as someone who sees thousands of children in foster care, how can I communicate my feelings to my friend gently? The way she is pushing me is making me feel very uncomfortable and like she sees me as less of a woman, and leading me to question it myself. I just don't want to hurt her feelings, but I do want her to understand and accept my wishes. Too long didn't read. I don't want children. My best friend didn't used to and now does. He patronizingly tells me I will one day and thinks I should freeze my eggs before I'm 35 to preserve a future I've never wanted. How can I help her understand that it's never what I wanted? All I want is for her to respect my wishes. You've gotten some good advice here already. Tell your best friend that the topic is off limits. If she won't drop it, walk away, hang up the phone, stop replying to messages, etc. You have to be blunt about this. Hopefully this will help get your boundaries across to her. As for getting her to see your side, that will be more difficult. She knows your reasons for not wanting children, and those are good reasons. But she still feels that bugging you about it is worth it since you might change your mind. She even wants you to go through a whole process and spend a lot of money on that chance. Is it worth it? Only you can answer that. But please think carefully about parenthood and everything it entails. Having a child is one decision you can't take back. Edit, please feel free to join us over at r/childfree. Yes, there are rants, but there's a lot of supportive, awesome people over there. They can give you another perspective. Friend, I have asked you multiple times to stop this. Even if I were to change my mind, it would be absolutely none of your business about my choice. All your constant pressuring me is doing is making me resent hanging out with you. I'm asking you one last time, let it go. And if she doesn't, step back from the friendship. This is not a topic of conversation I'm willing to indulge. You are my friend, but out of my reproductive matters. I've told you before not to bring that up. Please respect my boundaries and drop it for good. If I want your opinion, I will ask for it. This is the third time you've crossed my very clear boundary. If you cannot stop yourself from talking about this, it will cause me to distance myself from you. After you've bluntly told her that you will not entertain her opinion on it, anytime she brings it up, the conversation stops. If you're on the phone, hang up. If you're in person, get up and walk away. A full, hard reset. It seems harsh, but I promise you it works. After 2 or 3 tries, they learn that they can't talk about that and still have access to you. You cannot change her opinion, but you can get her to shut up about it, and you should. Well, if you're 20 now, I don't think you really need to worry about making a promise or spending money about something that's 15 years away. Either way, the key here is that you need to stop having this debate with her. Engaging her in this conversation is not going to get the result you want. Set boundaries and maintain them. Friend, have babies blah 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 blah. I don't want to talk about this anymore, please stop bringing it up. Friend, blah 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 blah. Babies. This is me setting a boundary. Drop this subject or I'm going to end this hangout right now. Friend, okay fine sorry, well talk about something else. Or, friend, but please. Okay, so I'm going to leave now. I really don't appreciate how you're not respecting me boundaries. I'm not going to respond to any messages from you for the next 24 hours. Bye. And leave. Rinse and repeat until she gets it through her skull that when you say stop, she needs to respectfully stop pushing. Some folks need to be trained, and boundary setting and holding work like a charm. Plus it weeds out the psychos. My boyfriend, 22 meters, wants to meet up with his ex to clear up their breakup. She was quite intrusive in our relationship and I need advice on how to cope with it. My boyfriend and I met a year and a half ago. He had just been through a breakup and had finished with his ex, but she would still message him 1/2 a week and he would respond politely. He said initially it had been 6 months since his breakup. They had only properly been broken up for about a month, and still spoke. I didn't know this until much later. Context the XGF, they had been breaking up for 6 months but she wasn't able to accept it, plus they both had end-of-year exams at university, so they decided to put the breakup on hold until they had finished for the summer. They had been together for 3 years. I wasn't aware that they were still talking until one night he told me and I got pretty upset. I didn't really understand the context of their interactions. He had only been together about 6 weeks and had just started the relationship. He showed me the messages and his responses were very slow/pretty minimal. He then told me they had met up a couple of times since we had started dating and she was always upset. He didn't tell her he had started dating someone else, me, and had in fact promised her, the same week that he asked me on a date, he wouldn't date anyone else until she could get over him. I asked him to leave that evening so that I could think about whether I wanted to continue the relationship, but the next morning he was adamant about coming over to talk things out. I really wanted to be understanding of the situation, and sympathetic towards her. She was obviously hurting. After the evening when he told me, my BF blocked her on all socials even though I told him that wasn't a good idea as it would only hurt her more, since he said he had been responding to her messages. see they had decided to break up amicably. She somehow managed to message him on another platform saying, "This isn't communist China, you don't need to censor me. And if you don't want me to see stuff, tell her to stop posting pics of you." A few weeks later she turns up at their mutual friend's concert and demands that they speak privately. I wasn't there. Where she asks him to unblock her, he tells her no and she leaves. Then over the next few months she repeatedly sends him messages through his iMessage, using her pet name for him, wishing him Happy Christmas, Happy New Year's etc. She would also watch my Instagram stories until I had to block her. Then she would watch my stories, and my friends' stories, through her food account. All of the above has contributed to me feeling a lot of anger and anxiety towards him and certain dynamics in the relationship, BC of the amount of things that have happened. My BF now wants to meet with her to clear the air. BC she has moved to London, and moved in with one of his ex-housemates no less. He has now said he wants to reconnect. BC she is someone who was important to me. My problem is that now that he has decided to meet her, he tells me that she was important to him, and that he doesn't want to throw her under the bus, wants to be able to socialize with her in group situations. He used to say she was boring, and someone who should have just stayed a friend. I just find his change of mind slightly confusing. I guess my deepest anxiety is that she will manipulate him into wanting her or something. Even writing this my brain is screaming at me saying if that does happen he's a pos and you'd be better off without him. I find it upsetting, but I can understand that it has to happen so that he can get rid of the guilt he feels about the whole situation. I said I was okay about it, after a lot of deliberation, and that I'd like to meet her after they sort stuff out. Part of me wonders if I should break up with him and save my own peace of mind. I have been working on my anxiety and jealousy in therapy for the past year and 2 months, and sometimes the sadness is overwhelming. We have an amazing relationship for the most part, and we both enrich each other's lives greatly. I'm not really sure why I'm even posting this, but I feel like I'm in a unique situation with no one to turn to. I just need some advice on how to process everything, and in the hope that someone will tell me it's all okay. Too long didn't read : My boyfriend wants to meet his ex who used to be a bit of a stalker and has now moved to our city. Am I crazy for being upset?